Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are here for you from 15th edition from Warsaw CR Flow Festival in Warsaw. And my name is Klara Łucznik, and I'm the curator of this year edition. And here with me, I have our intensive workshop teachers. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Nina Martin.
I'm Ray Chung.
I'm Anya Cloud.
And we had an idea to actually have this conversation together, kind of starting from the very hard problem. And I'm really curious to ask you, how do you find contact improvisation research today? And what interests you, but also what is the essence for you about this practice in context of this festival, but also your personal research? Ray, would you like?
Well, I really can speak from my own research perspective, which in the past few years is very much a physiological, working with connective tissue, the fascia, and how it relates to actual physical dance technique, contact improvisation technique. Because I find it's very helpful. I find that I'm actually a pretty competent teacher of techniques, so I enjoy doing it because I really like to see people have these light bulbs go up out in their head when they actually embody something that really shifts and transforms their movement.
I guess I would say for myself, I engage contact improvisation in my research in a way of finding new entry points into it in order to develop it as a form, a dance form. And I most recently am doing something called Rewire Movement States, which I'm taking into the form, which really kind of does a radical number on it and gives people different entry points and which brings out different qualities in the form, and it doesn't lose any of its value, but we can be pushing on the form to develop it further, rather than say, it's like stuck in time.
Yeah, I think that contact improvisation, in my experience right now, is that it's a kind of unwieldy mess as a form. But inside of that, because there are so many different things that are happening inside of this quite specific but also uncodified dance form technique. But it's also, as we've been talking, a folk dance. You've been using the language of folk dance, Nina, which I think is quite interesting. And then I think that who is practicing the form and who's teaching the form informs what the form is, and that's moving all the time. So then we're trying to track something that's always moving and coming from many directions. I think that's also why I'm excited about it, because it's moving.
Yeah, that idea about codified, I use the term classical contact, because it's sort of an enduring understanding of the form. What do you think about that? Like, is it codified or not?
Last year, we were still showing here, videos of from 70s or
right.
On our jam in memorial to Steve Paxton. Mm-hmm. But then, many times when we think about contact, we think about this rolling point of contact.
Yes.
So that's slightly already different qualities, which. So I'm kind of curious, what is for you this classical form?
That rolling point of contact for me is a classical form of it. It's and it's it's a very difficult dance technically to do, so you don't often see it done, in a very practiced, from a very practiced place. But yeah, for me, I can go to different places in the world and see something very similar, which people are calling contact improvisation. So it looks almost codified. It's improvised, codified, but that's why I use this term classical contact. So the research might not be about opening it up, taking it apart, what is it, kind of thing. I don't know if that makes, I like that word codified. And is it codified or is it not codified? Or maybe the classical contact dance is pretty codified as a concept. Rolling point. What are you thinking?
It's so juicy. It's so juicy. You want to say something?
Who wants to
Yeah.
say first?
I guess I don't. I guess I've never really thought of in terms of classical contact. It's because to me it's been such an open source kind of structure. I kind of get what you mean, that it's like the first generation's principles that were developed, and so that's kind of the foundation, and then to build on that. But yeah,
Yeah, it's hard to get a hold of, isn't it?
yeah, it is. And that's what's great about it. And that's why I'm still engaged in practicing and thinking about it and teaching. Because in the teaching process, I'm learning, okay, it's not that, but it is, but including something else. And the next time, oh, it's shifted. Now it's different. And because with different people, it's different. And so I feel like, I guess when you say the development of contact, that's kind of the image I get, that it's constantly shape-shifting. It's not beyond the realm of human experience, but it's within the realm of human possibility. So it kind of stays in that area, physically at least.
But go ahead.
Oh, I think I agree, but from a slightly, maybe it's a slightly different languaging place of, there definitely is a dominant aesthetic, but I think what can happen, so that creates like I don't know if I would call it classical, because I think also inside, to me, I'm like, wow, what would be maybe most classical is to orient from questions about what we don't know. Like if that was, that might be kind of, or foundational. I don't know about classical, because the word classical is also confusing relative to association with ballet.
It has baggage.
It has baggage with ballet, which I'm, it's
There's
there.
a little tongue in cheek there.
Yeah, no, I know, it's fun.
That's really interesting.
It's fun, but I do think that there's something about like for me, the questioning, a form that implicates the fullness of my body and my identity into a state of questioning and questioning with other people, that is just fascinating to me. And I haven't found other kinds of dancing that really that implicate me so fully, because for me also contact improvisation is a fundamentally queer form. It's something that you can't kind of hold on to. It's moving in many directions at once. If I'm practicing it, my system is actually having to reorient all the time. And I am also not controlling it. I have agency, but I'm not controlling it, because I'm also meeting somebody else in that space that we don't know yet with the skills. Because I also think it's a very technical form. I'm like, people are like, oh, contact is easy and natural. I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. It is so incredibly challenging and exciting, but challenging, like the skills to survive this world, really. Like, and I know that, survival was part of Steve's original research, like how can we survive falling? But I think like we were having a conversation about that sometimes people are practicing contact improvisation and they're never falling. And then I wonder about that, like, well, what happened to the falling part of the research? Not that it always needs to look like falling, but that's like the way of, that when you're falling, you know you're falling. There's a lot of fake falling.
So, kind of listening to that, I'm really curious how much the way of what we're practicing and the practicing of the skills, embodied skills, but also additional skills, in some ways creates our bodies or our systems in the way that we end up holding some aesthetics, which end up like this because we do those things. But also, I wanted to ask you about the kind of a place for risk in contact right now, because I can see also in our festival this, two different forces which we have in community, but also in how we hold spaces and how I also hold my teaching between, make sure it's safe for community, for the group, for my students, participants, and find the risk or find the excitement of not to know. How do you deal with that in your practice with that?
Let's see. Actually, that's central to what I'm doing. And developing techniques that oddly enough, people don't get hurt. It's very unusual that they get hurt, but that they're in a time score where they can't plan or think ahead, which starts upping the risk value. And it's been wonderful to see the shoot and the videos the other night, because it reanimates your thinking about it. But the immediacy of what they were doing was so evident, and I am very interested because that's for me an improvisational. Why we do it, to not be planning, and of course our brain always wants to plan. Because that's how we survive, is planning. So I'm just that's safe, but how do you also animate the form? So for me, that's where I'm at.
I guess when you talk about risk, there's physical risk, emotional risk, psychic risk, and they're kind of interweaving, but clearly. Can be counter to each other as well. I guess I tend to focus mostly on physical and let the others kind of follow and support. I actually work a lot with falling, and we did today. We're falling a lot, and I feel like it's very important. It's such. And when you watch the early videos, that's kind of what they're doing, jumping and falling. Of course on mats, but here it's on a pretty hard floor. So my task was how to let your body become the mat and still not be hurt. And that's where the whole kind of connective tissue thing was really helpful. And also performance, has been a big interest of mine, and really in contact, because the different parts of your brain, the conscious, the unconscious, like sometimes what Nancy used to call the inner and outer mandala. Inner is what you're not really conscious or so aware of. The outer is more, space, time, compositional elements, and how to integrate those in the body, in your brain, through your nervous system, and how to practice, which is really the key, to the point where you don't have to think about, and that the technique is transparent in a way, so that I can really focus on more the compositional aspects, what are the relationships, the elements, what's happening, And I relate that to what I would call economy of consciousness. How little do I need to be conscious of what I'm doing or what my body is doing so that I can really focus on painting the canvas of the piece, however it's evolving. And that's like an endless process of research, and I hope to do more of that in the future. I kind of went away from it for a while, and then now I'm coming back to focusing more on performance with contact.
That's actually also interesting, tension, especially, with this 50-year history of contact right now. It's a form which evolved from performance practice, but actually in kind of the worldwide spread, as Nina mentioned, in some ways became much more a community or folk dance. And then from time to time, we take it back to the performance, which we also try to do in a couple of days on this festival. So I'm kind of wonder how you also negotiate in your research this questions of what's performance and contact improvisation is today. What's that? Because in the very early days, it was very new way of moving, and that was enough. But kind of a question is it still enough today to negotiate that, or we need also other tools?
I mean, I can say maybe connecting your two questions, because I love talking about risk. I mean, my intensive here is called Contact Improvisation as a High-Risk Practice, which I will say is it was a big flip for me about 6 years ago, coming out of the Me Too movement and racial justice uprisings and a lot of unspoken about harm that's been happening within the field of contact improvisation, particularly to folks who are already marginalized, in ways that has been really ignored and not taken care of. All these kinds of risk that you're talking about, like physical, energetic, psychic, relational, and intersecting spaces. And I kept trying to make a safer space, how to find the parameters that make it super safe. And then I finally kind of reversed the pressure, actually. And part of that was going into a dojo and reading the parameters of the space on the wall. And the first one said, "This practice might be fatal." And I was like, oh, that has my attention. My attention just changed. I'm choosing still. I'm leaning into the yes of being in this space. And I was practicing Feldenkrais there, not Aikido, but still, I was like, wow, the space is framed in such a way that I'm actually less afraid, because I now am realizing the conditions I'm in, where I can meet my fear with more skill and more care. And then I was like, oh, maybe that would help contact improvisation, or my approach to contact improvisation. Because I'm really fiercely committed to perpetuating as little harm as possible, and really no tolerance, even though I might accidentally cause harm also, or I have, this can happen. It's, again, there's the risk there, but then how to have more skill and care so that not just the people with the most skill or the most privileged identities in the room are the ones who can thrive in the form, but actually there's the potential for the form to really be activated by many different people. And that feels connected also to queerness for me, about the risk of being a queer person in the world, one of many different marginalized identities, and how it is that my body and my history, is there space for me in this practice? What does it ask of me, and what does it offer to me? And I have to say, it's been very exciting research to flip the frame of high risk and to feel how people are showing up in that. And I have a performance and choreographic practice as a dance maker in the world, experimental contemporary dance, not just contact improvisation. So my making tends to be a much bigger frame. Making and performing is a much bigger frame than contact. But for me, contact improvisation, like radically, when I started studying at 19, it radically changed something in me that felt like it gave space for me inside of my dancing, more than any other form I had done. And I then get very curious about how my contact body actually could move through many different kinds of choreography or performance, that the skills of my contact improvisation training are with me. And I do think that that's connected to the martial arts lineage of contact improvisation, which is also often under-acknowledged, of Aikido and Tai Chi in particular. Sorry, that was a lot.
That's okay. But that brings me to, you were talking about the agency, and that's such a distinguishing aspect of this form, is that we own it. You know, we are it. It's not something that, you know, go to ballet class, you don't feel like I am an essential part of this form and I'm moving this form, right? It's a lot harder. So I really appreciate that idea of risk and agency. That does distinguish, and I'm sure there's some other forms, but just that's what keeps me in the form, actually.
And I guess, like, in my experience also, like, the agency, like, it's quite a unique place and quite serious practice where you can play with your agency and very consciously play and feel, like, embodied level when you are leading something, when you are allowing yourself to be led, when you let go of your kind of, you know, full control and negotiate between, or when you are in this flux of two people having agency as a or group, you know, having an agency as a bigger system. That's really also exciting for me. How do you find this year contact? Well, this year with Warsaw CI Flow, how do you find it? The festival this year in Warsaw?
Well, for me, I guess having been here a number of different times, well, for sure it's very well organized. And I appreciate that. And I think the cross-section of the students, there seems to be more Polish than in past years, because in past years there's been more international cross-section, but it's a new group of, I don't recognize but I haven't been here for a few years, but I don't recognize very many of the students from before. You know, like one or two older stalwarts, and it's great to see that the new generation is really coming up and really committed and excited about learning, and I really get that in the class.
Me too. Yeah. I find this is my third time in Poland teaching, and there's an openness. So I always have a good time here because people are hungry and they want to squeeze whatever they can out of you, which is wonderful. So I'm not sure why. I don't know if that's part of the history, the recent history of Poland, but it just feels very open and wanting knowledge and new information.
I agree with both of those descriptions. It's my first time here in Poland and at the festivals, but it feels very focused and curious and willing to research, which again, as we started the conversation, is not every contact improvisation space. you know, sometimes people are at festivals really to just have a joyride and not work, not research, not kind of unpack or uncover, dive in. And yeah, it's been exciting and a real pleasure. Also just incredibly inspiring to be alongside the two of you, and a big honor. I think the intergenerational aspect of the forum is also really special. It's very moving to me to feel the differences, but also so much connectivity in terms of like how the forum is moving over time. It's really special. Yeah, thank you.
It's a treat
Yeah.
to be with you. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
thank
to get
you.
to know you a little more.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us here today. And hopefully we'll see you
Again.
again.